Okay, this is part 4 of the Federalist number 7. Just wanted to remind you to take a look at this 6-part series. It's done by PBS, Liberty and American Revolution. I've already mentioned it, but every once in a while I want to remind you again. If you are new to learning American history, especially the era we're talking about, it's good to have a background, and this will give you background to how American Revolution started. I'll show you some maps, and the last part would be relevant to the Constitutional Convention, relevant to the writing of the Constitution in the Constitutional Convention, and what we are talking about here. This is the other series, Revolutionary War. It was done in 1995. It's narrated by Charles Kuralt. At that time, it was done by the Learning Channel. Also, definitely take a look at the series done by History Channel, American Revolution, Founding Fathers. Those will definitely help you with this project. Okay, now I'll go to the third paragraph of Federalist number 7. In the wide field of Western territory, therefore, we perceive an ample theater for hostile pretensions, without any umpire or common judge to interpose between the contending parties. This vast territory that they're talking about, okay, look at the map and look at the size right here, even this part of the United States, and compare it with the countries that are in Europe. It's real huge. On this map, you can't see how big it is, but just look at the map yourself and then compare it with, even the big countries like Germany or France in Europe, and you'll get a picture of what he's talking about. So he's saying that if there's not a judge, an umpire is, for some of you sports fans, you hear that name when you're watching a team sport, like football. But here he's talking about a judge. It says, who is to judge when these states argue about which part of this land belongs to them? Who is to judge and settle them down? Because this is going to feed into a lot of arguments that may flare up into flames of war, like wildfire. Remember, he's already used that phrase. Because once there's even a small battle between people from two states, then all of a sudden everything falls apart. So he says, beware of that. To reason from the past to the future, we shall have good ground to apprehend that the sword would sometimes be appealed to as the arbiter of the differences. Look at the history. Look at the history of humanity. Look at all the things that have happened. When you appeal to sword instead of reason, you pull the sword out, or other words, you start a war before trying to figure out a way out of it in a peaceful, reasonable way. The circumstances of the dispute between Connecticut and Pennsylvania, respecting the lands at Wyoming, admonishes us not to be sanguine in expecting an easy accommodation of such differences. See, Pennsylvania is right here, and Connecticut is right here. They had a dispute between them over a piece of land which was called Wyoming. He says, look at that. and learn from it. There are so many challenges like that between states that they think a piece of land belongs to them. It's part of their territory. Wyoming is not the same as the state of Wyoming, which is here, okay? It's just another name for a piece of territory that there was a dispute over it between state of Connecticut, which is right here, and Pennsylvania. So he says they had a dispute over there. So he says, we've already seen these disputes between the states. You know there are going to be more. And it admonishes us, it says, not to be sanguine in expecting an easy accommodation of such differences. It says you can't take it for granted. You're not going to have an easy solution to these problems. These early disputes already admonish us. Admonish us means they teach us a lesson. They bring to our attention that we have to be careful. The Articles of Confederation oblige the parties to submit the matter to the decision of a federal court. The submission was made, and the court decided in favor of Pennsylvania. But Connecticut gave strong indications of dissatisfaction with that determination, nor did she appear to be entirely resigned to it. Resigned to it means she was not entirely happy with it, happy with the resolution, happy with the solution. Because under their first constitution, Articles of Confederation, Connecticut and Pennsylvania went to court over that little territory called Wyoming. And when the court ruled, Connecticut was not happy with it. They were not happy with the result. Till by negotiation and management, something like an equivalent was found for the loss she supposed herself to have sustained. So even after the court ruled, they had to go to another dispute resolution. They had to find another answer for it. They had to give Connecticut a piece of land somewhere to make her happy, or work out a deal where she'd be happy with what the court had decided. Nothing here said is intended to convey the slightest censure on the conduct of that state. She no doubt sincerely believed herself to have been injured by the decision, and states, like individuals, acquiesce with great reluctance in determinations to their disadvantage. He says we are not picking on Connecticut. We are not saying Connecticut is all bad. Okay? But he says we have to be realistic. States, like human beings, when they feel like something has been taken from them, especially if they feel like it's been taken from them for the wrong reasons, not fairly, they don't acquiesce. They don't go quietly. They make trouble. So he says we have to be realistic. Now, he's giving that as an example so that we expect more of this trouble between states. It was not only this claim between Pennsylvania and Connecticut. There were going to be more challenges. So Hamilton reminds us that without a right umpire, U-M-P-I-R-E, someone to judge amongst parties. Without an umpire, which is considered fair, we're going to be dealing with a lot of trouble over these land disputes, over these land claims. So he's preparing the reader that if you don't accept this Constitution, you will be seeing the flames of war between these states amongst several states, spreading fast and spreading wild. See this little area also, it says Connecticut Reserve. So just look at the claims on different states we're making on different lands and just keep the perspective. Another thing that I think you should do, like I mentioned, is just look at the square kilometers that these areas make up and compare them with the area of different countries in Europe. So you're not talking about small pieces of land, you're talking about huge pieces of land that they were arguing, or they were going to argue about. They were going to have disputes about.